The transfer window might still be open, but at Ibrox, the drama is already in full swing. Rangers have been active in the market, with ins and outs shaping a squad that's under enormous pressure to deliver. But amidst the usual noise of pre-season, dealings, one situation is starting to raise real eyebrows. A fresh bid from France has thrown serious doubt over the future of one of Rangers' most impactful forwards, leaving the club with a pivotal decision to make as the countdown to deadline day accelerates. Hamza Eigenmann, the explosive young striker who took Scottish football by storm last season, is at the center of it all. Lille from Ligue 1, Ligue 1 have renewed their interest with a proposal that frankly didn't go down well in Glasgow. A loan offer with no fee attached was swiftly dismissed by the Rangers hierarchy, and for good reason. We're talking about a player who netted 16 goals in his debut season, quickly becoming a fan favorite and a constant menace for opposition defenses. To even suggest a free loan for a striker of his caliber, especially with only 2 weeks left in the window, was seen as borderline disrespectful. There's no indication yet whether the French club will return with a serious financial package, but if they want to get their man, it's going to take a fee well into 8 figures. For now, Eigenmann remains in Russell Martin's plans. He returned to action last weekend, coming off the bench during the Premier Sports Cup win over Alloa, a performance that was far from convincing but got the job done. He's now in the mix to start in the crucial Champions League playoff tie against Club Brugge. With doubts over the fitness of Cyril Desires, who picked up a knock in the recent loss to Victoria Pleasant, Martin may have little choice but to thrust Eigenmann straight into the spotlight once again. The Nigerian forward has shown flashes of brilliance, but consistency has been elusive, and the question remains whether he can shoulder the responsibility in such a high-stakes clash. Desires, meanwhile, has his own story unfolding. Not only is his involvement tonight uncertain due to injury, but recent comments he made to the Belgian press have sparked fresh speculation about his long-term future. In an interview, he confirmed that Club Brugge had approached him on 2 separate occasions, once during his time at Genk, and again while he was with Cremonese in Italy. Both overtures ultimately came to nothing, but his remarks about life in Belgium, purchasing a home in Mechelen, and being open to a return, even name-dropping KV Mechelen, have stirred the pot. While he didn't explicitly say he's looking for a move, the tone was open-ended enough to make supporters nervous. He talked about keeping doors open, about never knowing where football will take you, and with the Belgian Giants coming to Ibrox tonight, it adds an extra layer of intrigue to an already compelling European fixture. If Desires doesn't play due to injury, or if his head is turned by past and potentially future interest from Belgium, then Rangers might be forced to rely on a very different attacking setup for one of their most important matches of the season. So far, Russell Martin has described Dessa's status as touch and go. According to the manager, the injury isn't as bad as initially feared, and there's hope he could still feature, if not tonight, then certainly by the weekend. But it's yet another headache for Martin, who has found the early weeks of his Rangers reign anything but smooth. Domestic form has been underwhelming to say the least. 2 SPFL matches in, and points have already been dropped against Dundee and Motherwell. Hardly the title-challenging start that fans were expecting. Even the League Cup win over Alloa, a side far below Rangers level, did little to inspire confidence. It was a labored, disjointed performance that raised more questions than answers. Martin's appointment in the summer was never universally popular. After a drawn-out managerial search that saw names like David Ancelotti touted as frontrunners, the board eventually settled on Martin, a decision that surprised many, especially considering his rocky spell in charge of Southampton. The belief was that he'd bring a modern, progressive style to the team, a fresh approach to take Rangers forward. But with no league win to his name and Celtic already pulling 4 points clear at the top, the pressure is rising, and fast. The looming Old Firm derby at the end of August is beginning to feel like a make-or-break moment. Lose that, and Martin could find himself in dangerous territory, not just in terms of fan opinion, but in the broader conversation around his job. Security. While it may seem premature to talk about sackings just months into a new reign, this is Glasgow. The Old Firm is no ordinary rivalry, and the fallout from a derby defeat, especially one that pushes the points gap into double digits, could be catastrophic for Martin. That's not just the view from the terraces. Pundits have already begun sounding alarm bells. Some argue that while European progress is important, the domestic league must always be the priority, particularly given Celtic's dominance over the past decade, having won 13 of the last 14 titles. If Rangers fall further behind before September even begins, fan unrest could boil over into outright crisis. And while the board has publicly committed to a long-term vision and backed Martin through a summer rebuild, faith in the project will be tested like never before. The frustration is understandable. Supporters were promised change, promised ambition, and while there's been plenty of activity in the market, results on the pitch are what matter most. Possession-heavy football means little if it doesn't translate to victories, and so far, Rangers haven't shown they're ready to mount a serious title challenge. The new faces need time. Yes, but time is a luxury rarely afforded in this part of the world, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Qualification for the Champions League would be a massive boost, financially, reputationally, and for squad morale. But failure, especially if accompanied by domestic stumbles, could tip the mood at Ibrox from concern to full-blown discontent. Tonight's first leg against Club Brugge, then, isn't just a European night. It's a litmus test for where this team really is. And with question marks hanging over key players like De Zers and Eigenmann, Martin will need every bit of tactical nows and man management skill he has to navigate it. On the pitch, Brugge are no joke. They've got Champions League pedigree and will come to Ibrox expecting a result. De Zers himself admitted they are favourites, praising their quality and consistency at the highest level. But he was also quick to defend Rangers and Scottish football in general, pushing back against the narrative that the SPFL is a two-horse race lacking in quality. According to him, the league is tougher than it gets credit for, and Rangers' run to the Europa League quarterfinals last year is proof that they can mix it with the best. That kind of mentality will be crucial tonight. The squad needs to believe they can cause an upset, and the Ibrox crowd will certainly play their part. Under the lights, with a place in the Champions League group stage on the line, this is exactly the kind of night that can change the course of a season. But only if Rangers are brave, focused, and clinical in the final third. Something they've struggled with far too often in recent weeks. The pressure is already intense, and the narrative around Martin is teetering. The board may have promised patience, but patience in Glasgow wears thin quickly. This is not a fan-based content with transition seasons or near misses. They want silverware, they want pride restored, and they want Celtic challenged at every step. Anything less, especially if the gap at the top widens, could turn the atmosphere toxic. As for the players, this is their moment to step up. Eigenmann, if he stays, has to prove he's more than just a breakout star. De Zers, if fit, needs to deliver when it matters most. And Martin has to show that all the talk about building a new era at Ibrox is more than just words. Because right now, with the clock ticking on the window and the games coming thick and fast, the margin for error is rapidly disappearing. The situation Russell Martin finds himself in is one that few managers envy, trying to instill a new philosophy, blood in a wave of new signings, steady the nerves of a restless support, and all while keeping pace in a league where one slip can define a season. The club's messaging has been clear. Martin is part of a long-term vision, someone chosen to bring structure, identity, and modern football back to Ibrox. But football is rarely so forgiving. In Glasgow, long-term plans are a luxury afforded only to those who win, and win consistently. What Martin is attempting is bold. He's trying to move away from a reactive, counter-attacking Rangers side and into a team that controls games, dominates possession, and imposes itself home and away. That sounds fantastic on paper, but so far, the execution has been inconsistent at best. The backline has looked vulnerable under pressure, the midfield has struggled to dictate tempo, and despite flashes of individual brilliance, the attack has lacked cohesion. There's been a worrying lack of ruthlessness in front of goal, and that more than anything is what separates title challengers from also-rans. The recent slip-ups against Dundee and Motherwell have exposed that gap in clinical edge. Games Rangers should have seen off comfortably turned into frustrating stalemates, and each dropped point has felt heavier, with Celtic setting a relentless pace. For Martin, the challenge now is psychological as much as tactical. He has to convince this group many of whom are still new to Scottish football. That pressure is part of the territory, that criticism is constant, and that the only way to silence it is to win. The margin for learning curves is razor thin. At a club like Rangers, patience is measured in minutes, not months. But even with those stumbles, there have been some positives. In Europe, Rangers have shown glimpses of the resilience and grit that has defined their best nights in recent years. It's no secret that Ibrox under the lights can be one of the most intimidating atmospheres on the continent, and the squad seems to lift itself for European competition in a way that hasn't quite translated to domestic matches. That is both encouraging and frustrating. Encouraging because it shows what the team is capable of. Frustrating because fans are desperate to see that same fire every weekend in the league. That inconsistency in mentality is something Martin has spoken about. He wants a squad that believes in the process, that doesn't crumble when things go wrong. But belief can't be manufactured. It has to be earned through performances, through wins, and through moments that shift the momentum. Tonight's clash with Club Brugge offers exactly that kind of moment. A win or even a strong performance could buy Martin crucial time, restore faith, and give the dressing room a much-needed injection of confidence. A defeat, on the other hand, would only pile further scrutiny on a project that is still finding its feet. And scrutiny is already intense. The summer rebuild, while ambitious, has raised as many questions as answers. Some signings have shown a promise. Players like Halio Asgard have brought energy and creativity, while others are still adjusting. But time is short. The fixtures are coming fast, and the old firm clash is looming large. It's no longer just about tactics or systems. It's about grit, leadership, and who can handle the heat when everything is on the line. Martin knows this. He's spoken openly about the magnitude of the job and the expectations that come with it, but words will only carry him so far. Results have to follow. What makes the pressure even more acute is the strength of the rivals across the city. Celtic, under their current regime, have become a machine. They have continuity, they have depth, and they have a clear style of play that's been honed over. Seasons, not weeks. Rangers, in contrast, are starting from scratch in many areas. New manager, new faces, new approach. That disparity in stability is showing in the early weeks of the campaign, and unless Rangers can find consistency quickly, the gap could become unbridgeable before winter even arrives. That's why the Champions League qualifiers carry such weight, not just because of the financial windfall they offer, but because they provide a chance to reset the narrative. Europe has often been where Rangers shine when the domestic spotlight becomes too intense. The supporters, too, seem to rally differently on European nights. There's a sense of unity, of defiance, that can lift the team beyond its flaws. But those nights can also be cruel. Club Brugge are no strangers to hostile environments, and they've shown in recent years that they're more than capable of holding their own on big stages. For Rangers to succeed tonight, they'll need more than passion. They'll need precision, focus, and players stepping up in key moments. Whether that's Dezers, if he's fit, or someone like Danilo, who's been waiting for his chance to impress, it doesn't matter. What matters is that someone delivers, because right now this team is crying out for a talisman, someone who can grab the game by the scruff of the neck and drag Rangers through it. Last season, that man was often Eigerman, who despite being just 22, played with maturity and confidence well beyond his years. But with his future now up in the air, and with French clubs circling, the question is whether his head is still in the fight. The board will have to weigh that very carefully. Selling Eigerman now, with the window about to slam shut, will be a massive gamble, unless there's already a replacement lined up. But turning down a big offer, if one comes, also carries risk. If the player wants to go, keeping him against his will could backfire. It's a delicate situation, and one that needs to be handled with care. Supporters are watching closely, not just because they want to see their best players stay, but because decisions like this speak volumes about the club's ambition. Letting a key striker walk without a proper contingency plan would send the wrong message, especially now when belief is fragile and every decision is being analyzed through the lens of, are we really going to challenge this year? Because that's what it all comes down to. The talk of projects and long-term planning is all well and good, but the fans want to see fight. They want to see passion. They want to see a Rangers side that stands toe-to-toe with Celtic and says, we're not going anywhere. That fight needs to start now. Tonight, On the European stage where legends are made and seasons are defined. Martin has spoken about his bucket list. Winning the league, going to a major tournament with Nigeria, and playing in the Champions League. Well, here's the opportunity. And it's not just his dream on the line. It's the club's credibility, its ambition, and its identity as one of Europe's storied names. If Rangers can harness the energy of the crowd, if they can play with clarity and confidence, there's every chance they can put themselves in the driver's seat ahead of the return leg. But the margin for error is almost non-existent. Mistake, one lapse in concentration, and Club Brugge will pounce. They're organized, they're efficient, and they'll punish any complacency. What this team needs now is a turning point, a night that reminds everyone, fans, pundits, even the players themselves, what Rangers are about. That starts with courage. Courage to play forward, courage to take risks, and courage to fight for every ball like it's the last. Too often, in recent weeks, that edge has been missing. There's been hesitation, sloppiness, a lack of belief. That has to change. And perhaps that's what this whole moment is about. Not just a game, not just a transfer saga, but a defining chapter in the early pages of Martin's Ibrox reign. One where he either galvanizes his squad and turns the tide, or watches as doubt hardens into frustration and pressure becomes unbearable. It's easy to forget how quickly things can shift in football. A couple of wins, a heroic night under the floodlights, and suddenly the mood is transformed. But the opposite is just as true. A flat performance, a derby defeat, and the pressure becomes a storm. That's the tightrope Martin is walking right now. The pieces are there. A squad with potential. A fan base desperate to believe. A board willing to back the vision. But the window is closing both figuratively and literally. There's no time left for missteps. If Rangers are serious about challenging for honors this season, it has to start tonight. Not in October, not after the next international break. Tonight. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to get all the exclusive news about Rangers FC. Don't overlook any details about your beloved team. It's crucial for Rangers FC fans. The chatter surrounding Ibrox has taken a dramatic twist this week after Tom Lawrence, a player often described as reserved and careful with his words, allegedly broke the silence with a statement that no one expected. He reportedly branded the Rangers dressing room as toxic and disunited. Such a claim, coming from a senior professional with international experience, carries weight and has naturally set off shockwaves across Scottish football. Rumours have spread like wildfire across Glasgow, with whispers that the Welshman's words reflect more than just a passing frustration. Observers point to the team's inconsistent performances, moments of visible discord on the pitch, and subtle body language between key players during matches as clues that support the unsettling picture painted by this revelation. Journalists close to the club suggest that Lawrence has grown weary of internal cliques, a lack of leadership structure, and disagreements over tactical responsibilities, all contributing to a growing rift that threatens the very fabric of the team. If true, the alleged admission does not simply expose cracks. It suggests a fracture running straight through the heart of the squad, raising questions about whether the club hierarchy has underestimated the depth of its off-field issues, while focusing primarily on results and transfers. The footballing world knows well that dressing rooms are fragile ecosystems where egos, ambitions, and personalities collide, but the intensity of Lawrence's supposed remarks has forced a more searching look at the Rangers' environment. Supporters, particularly those on social media platforms, have been quick to voice concern and demand answers, while critics argue that such internal strife has long been visible to the trained eye. The timing of the comments allegedly made in the wake of a tense training session could not be more damaging as the squad prepares for pivotal fixtures that could define their season. Sources close to the club claim that younger players feel sidelined, that certain senior figures dominate conversations, and that a mood of mistrust lingers in corridors where once there was unity. It is whispered that players return from international duty, remarking on the stark contrast between the camaraderie experienced with national squads and the frostiness endured back in Glasgow. The notion of a toxic atmosphere is particularly alarming because it hints at something beyond mere disagreement. It suggests negativity has become ingrained, that morale has decayed to the point where the very culture is under siege. For a club steeped in tradition and expectation, such whispers are nothing short of scandalous. What makes this story even more compelling is that Rangers are not languishing at the bottom of the table. They remain competitive in league and cup competitions, which makes the alleged fractures all the more perplexing. Analysts question how a team with such resources and talent could find itself at odds internally when results, on paper at least, have not entirely collapsed. Some commentators argue that success can mask dysfunction temporarily, but unresolved tensions eventually erupt. Others insist that even in winning teams, a poisonous environment corrodes from within, leaving managers to juggle performance with firefighting behind the scenes. Fans, particularly those who pack Ibrox each week, are left wondering whether the cheers on match day conceal something far darker beneath the surface. One striking suggestion from insiders is that training intensity has become a source of friction. Some players demand greater tactical clarity, while others feel their workload is either excessive or insufficient. Lawrence's alleged outburst has therefore ignited a debate not only about harmony, but about coaching methods, accountability, and leadership within the club. The question that now hovers over Rangers like an unwelcome shadow is whether these supposed internal problems will spill over visibly and derail the season. The management naturally faces scrutiny amid this growing storm. While the club has made no official statement regarding Lawrence's supposed comments, silence in itself has fueled speculation that there may be substance behind the rumor. Experienced supporters recognize this pattern: whispers of unrest, followed by cagey press conferences, and eventually either decisive interventions or further leaks that confirm the smoke indeed hides fire. If the dressing room is truly divided, then responsibility must rest with those charged with guiding and uniting the squad. Critics point to tactical indecision, mixed messaging about roles, and inconsistent team selection as possible sources of frustration, while others argue that leadership gaps among senior players are proving costly. There's a sense that Rangers are at a crossroads, where continuing to ignore the whispers risks a full-blown crisis. Equally, clamping down too harshly could create a climate of fear rather than unity. Fans expect transparency, yet football clubs are notorious for protecting their internal workings. The longer the silence persists, the more emboldened the rumor mill becomes, and the more people believe that Lawrence's alleged comments reflect not exaggeration, but an unfiltered truth that many have suspected for months. Above all, the wider Scottish football community is riveted, for stories of discord within one of the nation's biggest clubs are always consumed with glee or concern depending on allegiance. Rivals quietly relish the turmoil, suggesting that Rangers' troubles provide opportunities for others to exploit, while neutral observers lament the damage that such a toxic narrative could inflict upon the domestic game. Lawrence, if indeed he made such a remark, now finds himself at the center of a whirlwind that could either elevate him as a voice of honesty or isolate him as a disruptive presence. For Rangers, the path forward hinges on whether unity can be restored swiftly before fractures turn into irreparable divisions. Supporters cling to hope that the club's traditions of resilience and pride will prove stronger than whispered bitterness, but hope alone cannot mend a dressing room if distrust reigns. With rumors swirling and speculation intensifying daily, the saga may prove to be a defining chapter in the modern history of the club, illustrating that in football, as in life, what happens away from the public eye often shapes destiny more than any 90 minutes played on the pitch. Greetings, fans! Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, as it's greatly appreciated by Rangers FC. And don't forget to share your thoughts on the news in the comments section below. Until the next video, stay tuned.